Om. Back straight. Both hands upon your laps. Om Bhur-Bhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yonah Prachodayat. Invocation of the Divine Master Adiguru Muni Vyas. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Deva Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Akhand Mandalakaram, Vyaptam Yena Characharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Om Shri Guruve Namaha. व्यासरूपेण आवाहयामि स्थापयामि ध्यायामि पूजयामि ततो नमस्कारं करोमि. Shrimed Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 9, verse number 25. There has to be a spread which is mandatory for this particular verse. Cannot confine to mere the text, the words of the verse. Something more has to be added upon, as gathered after reading, absorbing, and then contemplating upon this particular verse. Let's get down with the words of the verse and then move on to the further interpretation. This is the one. Yanti devavrata devan pitrin yanti pitravrataha bhutani yanti bhutejyaha yanti madhyajinaha apimam. Reach the abode of gods, those committed to gods. Reach the abode of Pitra, that's the mains, that committed to them. Reach the abode of spirit, that committed to spirits, whereas they reach me, that worship me. Let's once again reiterate. They reach abode of gods, those who are committed to them. They reach the abode of Pitra, those that are committed to them. They reach the abode of spirits that are committed to them, whereas they reach me that worship me. And before we go on the exact words, certain understanding must be clarified at the outset. And the outset clarification is me, the word me. Those that worship me come to me. Those that worship gods go to the gods. Those that worship Pitra, the mains, they go to them. Those that worship spirits, they go to them. But those that worship me, underline with apostrophe, they come to me. Is it some kind of a special bias about Krishna, Lord Krishna? Because whosoever will worship me, that is Krishna, will go to Krishna, and going to Krishna means emancipation, liberation. Because as the verses that precede this particular one, they bestow us the understanding that all those who worship Krishna are going to gain the emancipation, moksha, liberation. So, does that mean that there is a specific special bias with one particular idol, one particular god, that unless you worship it, you will not be able to liberate? You shall confine to the entrapment of death and then again rebirth. Is that something like that? Yes, by a simple reading, this is what we gain, what we gather. But going deeper into it, it unfolds to be entirely different. Let us understand that me over here, the word me, does not ascribe to one particular idol over here. In the form of Krishna, one that beholds a flute with the cows, generally observed standing with cross leg. No, not that one. That's the form given to it. Whereas this particular indication is towards that Almighty, which is all pervasive, beyond any form. It does not have any form, a roop. It's the unmanifest one, the Virat Brahma, the Virat Swarup of Krishna, which is all pervasive, absolutely not confined to an image. So that is the indication of me. Me should not be understood in any case as merely an image of a particular idol. Otherwise, the entire understanding will go and then delve into this realm that it is a special bias towards one special God. No, it is not so. It is about the Virat Brahma. So, me here represents the Virat Brahma, the one that is unmanifest, to whom it has been suggested. This is now the reading between lines. It has been suggested that if you propitiate that God, worship that God as a selfless seeker, then you gain moksha, liberation. You need not fall into the entrapment of birth and death cycle. You liberate. Whereas if you have any particular seeking in the form of some kind of a gratification that you aspire, some desire, some yearning, and for that you worship any particular God, then you shall obviously fall into the entrapment of birth and death and death and birth, the cycle. Does that mean that it is only the Krishna whom I selflessly worship and then I will gain liberation? Yeah, this is a very technical question. No, there is no specific bias towards Krishna. For that matter, any idol. I can recall one of the interaction of one a seeker with the Ma Anandamayi, the great exalted one. The seeker wanted to understand those who worship a particular god and those who do not worship a particular god but are selfless, engaged into service, righteousness. What is their fate? And Ma had answered, the exalted mother had answered to that seeker, whosoever beholds whatsoever in the mind as bhava shall ultimately gather the same as an outcome. Whosoever shall bear whatever bhava, express whatever bhava, hold on to whatever faith, shall be able to manifest in accordance to that. Whatever you behold within yourself, not necessary that you behold one image, confined to that image, and worship that image selflessly out of pure devotion. Pure devotion, you start worshipping, for example, Hanuman. Does that mean that if you worship Hanuman selflessly, you are again into the entrapment of the cycle of birth and death? No, you're not. The moment you have a faith, a pure faith, which is not colored by any kind of an aspiration or desire, it is selfless, it is pure faith, pure devotion. It is but obvious that you are now relinquished from the entrapment of the cycle of birth and death. So, what does it mean? It means the same God, the same image of the God, whatsoever it may be, anyone can relinquish you from the cycle of birth and death, can bind you within the cycle of birth and death. Because according to ancient Indian wisdom, and as we gather under the parlance of beliefs, the same God can be propitiated, worshipped for even the left part of the worship, which we call as the Vam Marga, The Vam Marga means the Tantric Upasana. It's the same with Hanuman, the same with Ganpati. They have a Tantric Swarup and they have the Sato Guni Swarup as well, both of them. So the same idol can be source of your liberation. The same idol can be also a source of your binding into the cycle of birth and death. So it is the same. What matters and what differs is what do you behold as your faith? What is your emotion at that moment? Are you worshipping as a selfless seeker? Or are you worshipping the same God with some kind of a desire held within? That shall determine whether you will liberate or shall remain confined into the entrapment. This verse corresponds to the scientific formula of action and reaction. As the action shall be, so shall be the outcome. And here, the action and reaction in the form of the faith that you will express, the faith that you shall hold deep within towards any deity, not confined to deity alone. It could be other than God. Maybe you have an objective in your life, some good objective, which may be corresponding to politics, religion, spirituality, business, social work, anything. Even that objective can also be personified as a god. Why not? Who says that God must have some form and that form has to be either human or the God has to be the unmanifest without form? The God can also be in the form of your objective, and your corresponding objective shall cherish as outcome in accordance to itself. So do not merely confine the definition of the God which remains entangled with something which is in form